Okay, right. Well, welcome everybody. So, today, fast fashion and the neurological damage of social media. Not all in one speech. That would be quite a lot of 18 minutes, I think. So, Jenny's going to start us off. Is fast fashion a good thing? Over to you. I will click yes. I will. That's why I got a degree from Cambridge, to click buttons like this.
I want you to think about the last time you went shopping. What did you buy? Where did you go? And how much did it cost? Do you know who made it? Or how much that person was paid? This is the reality of the fashion industry today. And if you're anything like me, the answer to this question is no. These have been completely defined by the lack of communication. Official figures have shown that less than 10% of clothes that we wear are made here in the UK today, whereas even as late as the 1960s, 95% of clothes are made in the UK. This is due to things like the local tailors and bespoke fashion trends of that era. But today we have fast fashion, which bears a burden on our planet, our workers, and the fashion industry itself. It can take us this was 3 weeks for clothes to go from designers right to the front of our stores. And the sheer volume of clothes mean that the fashion industry is now worth $3 trillion. It's the most profitable moment in history, and the second most profitable industry in the world. But what is the true cost of this success, and who's bearing the brunt of it? For us, the consumer, cheap prices lead us to believe that we're saving more, when in reality, we're just spending and consuming more. As late as the 1990s, fashion consumption has risen 500%. This doesn't literally mean that our wardrobes are about 5 or 6 times bigger. This is the quality and value of what we're buying has gone down. However, and more importantly, fast fashion should grow with people on the planet that we live on, and we as consumers are completely unaware. We are also half the problem. In today's society, fashion is a way to express individuality and art. It shows creativity and ideas, and preferences through things such as culture and religion, and everyone has their own unique sense of style. And it's now easier for people with changing fashion trends, like Zara. Zara is the world's leading fashion retailer, and often their products are cut on one location, assembled in the next, and then shipped off to warehouses around the world. It's not surprising, therefore, to learn that the fashion industry is worth 10% of the world's carbon footprint. But how are products being made? The answer to this is using cheap dyeing chemicals such as polyester, which is now used 4 more times than cotton. The average American disposes 50 to 85 pounds of clothes per year, and these all end up with landfills. When it comes to people, the demand for cheap labour has led to the race to the bottom and abuse their supply chain. And take up Bangladesh as an example. Whilst enjoying one of the world's most fastest growing economies, in 2013, over 1,000 garment workers died due to a structural failure in one of the buildings, and over 2,500 people were hurt. Ever since, little progress has been made and little has been done to stop the blatant discrimination against these workers, which poses one crucial question. Is it actually worth it? Is buying all these clothes actually make us any happier? Many studies have shown that this is not the case. So therefore, is it worth spending all our money on these extra shipping costs because they're poorly made and maybe only worn once or twice? Even if they are handed down, only 10% of clothes we actually donate are actually given to charity. So what if we break these bad habits that have been formed over many years to better ourselves and the planet? This means a lot of change, a lot of progression to sustainable fashion, which is a movement and process of fostering change towards greater ecological integrity and social justice, which sounds pretty hard and is a big step from where we are currently. But sustainability is a less of cost for our planet, but more of a cost for our wallets. These things such as making better raw materials and wages for workers. This leads us to another question. Could fashion actually ever be sustainable? Take denim as an example. It's estimated that it takes 1 kilogram of cotton to make 1 pair of jeans. And for 1 kilogram of cotton, you need 10,000 litres of water. And to put that into perspective, that's 10 years worth of drinking water for one person. And I think of all the jeans in the H&M or Primark in town, and then in Yorkshire, and then up and down the country, and then across the world. And you can see how this is becoming a large problem. I'm sure most of us in the UK would think that sustainable fashion is important, but less than a third of us are actually willing to pay more for our clothes, thanks to a study in April 2020. Black Friday is also a big contributor towards fast fashion. I'm sure I speak for most of us here when we say we bought something that we didn't really need just because it was cheaper in the shops. But every year there's more calls for this to be put to a stop, like the dress on the screen, for example. Normally it's just £8, but due to the 99% sale, it reduces just 8p. It's holidays like this which create bad habits and normalise fast fashion, regardless of its impact on the planet. Recently, there's been a call to ban fast fashion and a rise in Black Friday and anti-Black Friday movements. Like the brands Lush and Dessian are taking a stand against it by asking customers to sign petitions and closing their website on Black Friday and Cyber Monday. The phrase buy better and buy less is something I think we should all adopt and put into practice in our lives. Brands such as H&M are key players in this sustainable world. These are things such as Conscious Collection, which is made from 50% sustainable materials. However, there's been recent concerns as to whether workers are being paid enough and can live off their minimum wage. In the pandemic, over $3 billion worth of orders have been cancelled. This has led to a rise in things such as the Clean Clothes campaign, which was formed in 1989 and fights for the fundamental rights of garment workers all across the world. Due to 93% of families don't pay a living wage, especially in economically poor countries, which still still use child labour. So far, they've campaigned towards better health and safety laws for workers, with put up their minimum wage and secure compensation payments to factory workers. They've also helped people when they've been arrested in peaceful protests in places such as Cambodia, Turkey, China, and Bangladesh. And they've helped release those charges. So what can we do to help all of this? There's someone going to be sitting here telling you how bad fast fashion is if I don't actually tell you how to change anything. And I'm not saying you can't buy from places such as this, because I occasionally myself are guilty of that sometimes too. And at this moment in time, it's also completely realistic. But consumer demand is what's going to make fast fashion more affordable for all of us, and more brands will turn into friendly. It will take many years and time, and much progress has been made, but there's still a long way to go. Especially in times like COVID, when it's easier than ever to access shopping online. As a nation and community, I hope you want to be more responsible with where we spend our money. So I want you to all go away and consider all that I mentioned and ways you can possibly integrate it into your life. Whether that's just being more conscious, or buying from more charity shops, or just avoiding buying extra clothes you just don't need. But even making the choice just to shop more sustainably. And it's easy to ask yourself one simple question: is it really worth it? So
Questions?
What do you say to poor families who can't afford sustainable fashion?
I think that obviously if you don't have the money to buy sustainable things, you shouldn't, but like shop more consciously where you can. But even it's going to start with people that can afford it, buying more sustainable clothes, and it becomes more affordable for everybody. So I think the people that can start should, and then the companies are struggling.
Do you think the government should play a large role in this prevention?
Yeah, I think that the government should be at least more aware of what happens, or try and stop introduce laws into stopping like a child labour, because it's more common in economically poor countries, but I think they're able to.
Do you not think that brands will just exploit the whole conscious thing and they'll check people spending more money just for them to make a higher profit?
I'm sure some brands will be, but like with there's more people campaigning each year for that comes to a stop. So I think that they should be responsible for what we do, but that they possibly could do that. But I mean, like hopefully not. I think that especially with the government taking more charge here as well.
So thank you, Jenny, for such an interesting talk, and it's definitely eye-opening, and you don't realise how many brands are actually guilty of this mass production and child labour, and also how destructive it can be for the environment. That's something I don't think about when I shop. So thank you, and I definitely will be thinking twice before I buy anything from a website or just anywhere. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so over to you.
So is
Oh,
social
hang on,
media,
it looks different, doesn't it? We've had to convert this from Keynote to something from Microsoft, the IT department, and so if it's a bit glitchy, sorry, we might have to fill in the gaps, but it looks a bit different up there to what's on here, I'm afraid.
yeah, it's just a question.
Is it? Okay, all right, off you go. We'll do it.
So is social media the cause of our current mental health crisis? As social media becomes a larger part of all of our lives, I wanted to draw more attention to perhaps the negative side of social media that often isn't discussed. With over 90% of our generation owning a social media network, and the average person spending 3 hours a day on this network, I think it's naive that we assume it doesn't affect us. So is it a crisis? In my title, I referred to our current situation as a crisis, which might seem slightly melodramatic, so I wanted to explain my reasoning. With a 93.5% increase in suicide rates in the 25s since 2012, and new figures showing that 20% of the world population is self-harmed in some form, I felt the current state of the nation's mental health is something I can't downplay. One of the most shocking pieces of research I found is that 45% of 9-year-old girls have died, which begs the question why. What are these children being exposed to, directly or indirectly, that has made them believe that their body image is the cause of their sadness, and so something that they need to change? I don't know for sure what I was thinking about when I was 9 years old, but I know I was never considering dieting. So was I a completely ignorant 9-year-old, or is this an exponentially growing social issue? So, why do I blame social media? Well, I don't think anyone will argue when I say life is becoming more complex all the time. We have family problems, health worries, exams, lifestyle changes, and in our case, even a global pandemic. So why do I blame social media? Well, for hundreds of years as a human race, we've had to deal with health problems. We've had life things to worry about. We've had family concerns. And we've had academic pressures, whether occupational or educational. But social media is new. And the vast shadow that it casts over our society is something we all have to come to terms with. I think it's only logical to assume the new problem is a result of the new cause. Next page. So, how does this relate to mental health? Many mental health conditions are a result of a form of self-control. As our life becomes more overwhelming, we try and do something to control how we feel, whether that be control using self-harm, anxiety attacks, or another form of control upon ourselves. As life becomes more stressful, we become more overwhelmed, and we become more mentally unwell as a result. So, how does this relate to Instagram? Even if you know that a picture you've seen on Instagram has been edited, you'll still feel insecure. I'm sure we've all seen the picture of Kendall Jenner from Valentine's Day of this year. She was in a red underwear set, and the picture was shared globally. Over 10 million people have liked this picture, and the picture is completely unrealistic. Social media is very good at making us feel like we're being sociable, when in reality, when you're online, you're very often alone, scrolling through your phone. As a generation, we are becoming more and more isolated. We are becoming withdrawn from our friends and more antisocial. And as face-to-face contact is key for human success and overall well-being, I think social media is completely counterproductive. So, yeah. So, a scenario. You're a keen Instagram user. Your feed is completely full of unrealistic body types, and so you begin to feel insecure. So you carry out the very human reaction of choosing to socialize to make yourself feel better. But you do this through yet another social media account, Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook, so ultimately you are still alone. I think this explains the very common feeling of loneliness reported within our generation, which can very easily spiral into anxiety and depression. So, you feel alone, you feel insecure, and you're feeling down. And you're in a constant spiral of comparison with the unrealistic. So, you post to Instagram, maybe alone or maybe with friends. You receive likes on this and people comment, but now you're stuck. Except this time you're stuck with a quantitative form of comparison. I've had 200 likes, but she's had 500, so is she better than me? Of course not, but the human brain is far from rational. This situation can make someone feel very out of control, and so explains the common trend of falling into ill mental health. So, if social media is making us all depressed, why do we keep using it? Well, an interaction via social media, whether a like or a message, releases the same amount of oxytocin as a social interaction in medicine. Oxytocin is a chemical within the brain that helps to reduce the feeling of stress and anxiety, and so momentarily you'll feel more relaxed. However, long term, as I said, this isn't true. One of the more shocking metaphors that I found when I researched was how this is very similar to the effects of psychological abuse. It starts to associate dopamine release within the brain with an act or a characteristic, and so beginning a pattern of reward and creating a perpetuated habit. For example, I used to have much darker hair than I have today. Say I posted a picture with my brown hair and received a certain amount of likes. I now post a picture with blonde hair and receive no likes. My brain will associate the fact that I'm now blonde with the increased amount of dopamine. So I look in the mirror one day and think I look blonder, and so I'll think automatically that I'm happier. This is very, very similar to how abuse affects the brain. It creates a habit that you're completely out of control of. Say if my abuser was particularly abusive every time I wore a red top, I would start to associate that colour with a negative hormone release. And so if I walked past the mirror and noticed I was wearing a red top, I'd immediately think of all the things that abuser had said to me, and so feel insecure and sad. Are we all in an abusive league with social media, completely under the illusion of Stockholm syndrome? Next slide, please. I'm sure you've all heard the story of Caroline Flack and how the media drove her to suicide at the beginning of last year. Although Caroline's story is much more related to the press side of the media, not the networking side I'm referring to, I think the underlying message remains the same. Caroline fell into a downward spiral of obsession with the media and how she was beginning to be portrayed. A picture was released of a bloodstained bed in relation to Caroline Flack. The media said this was as a result of a domestic abuse act that Caroline supposedly carried out on her boyfriend at the time. But this wasn't true. The blood on the bed was a result of a self-harm act Caroline carried out on herself in the midst of a non-violent argument. So overnight, a young woman struggling with her mental health in secret became a falsely accused domestic abuser. Although Caroline made me famous to us all, she was exactly the same as us. She was simply craving that dopamine hit that we all crave on a daily basis. So she continued to post on Instagram, she continued to react to the press, and her false publishings became worse. And this led to a 40-year-old woman in the midst of her career to take her own life last year. Although all of us were shocked and saddened by this news, and it began an open dialogue in terms of how mental health can be affected by social media, I think it was closed far too soon. I don't think anyone would try and tell me that this wasn't a tragic story, but what I find more tragic is that one person every 10 minutes takes their life as a result of a situation much like Caroline's. That's one person in the amount of time that I've been talking. So why should we be accepting this? So, is it all bad? Although I focused entirely on the negatives in my presentation, I think it's unfair to not consider some of the positives. With movements such as Black Lives Matter and #MeToo, social media helps to give a voice to those who are often wrongly considered voiceless by society. So, like many things, I think it's a great tool, but only when we work together to use it in balance. Thank you.